Okay, so I was thinking about this and wanted to do a video just talking about it in general. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but we'll see. Um, so in 1989, Tacoma, Washington, there was a shootout between some of the U.S. Army Rangers. I think it was Second Battalion. I might be wrong about that. Uh, and the Crips in Tacoma, Washington. Basically, some of them had bought houses in the area, and one of them in particular bought a house on the street at 23rd and Ash. And they went to Panama, got deployed, and all that, came back. And like while they were gone, the neighborhood got even worse than it already was. And like they were watching people deal drugs in front of their house now and shit. And like they started putting in security cameras and shit to like record this and talking to the police and yada yada yada. Anyway, the Crips don't like this, obviously, and they confront this dude in his front yard, and they inform him that they're going to come back with their whole gang, when the sun comes down or whatever. So I don't remember exactly what it was. He said something, to the effect of "okay," and he called up all of his friends that were in the area that were also in the Rangers and told them to bring meat for a barbecue and beer because they were going to have a party and whatever. Oh, and it would probably be a good idea if they brought a rifle. So uh, they start having their barbecue and whatever, and eventually, they talk about rules of engagement, and they have this whole discussion on this that basically you don't fire until you're fired upon and whatever, and that's the only reason why this shootout was not a bloodbath. Basically, I think the staff sergeant whose house this was, I forget his name. If you Google all this shit, you will find his name in an instant. But he should have been promoted. His career was ended because this was fucking 1989. And like, in reality, because of what happened here and how it went down and the limited loss of life, I would have made him a second lieutenant. And I think anyone who thinks anything other than that is fucking insane. Like, if you read into this, basically they defended the house and fired when fired upon. And I think they shot one guy that probably died in a hole somewhere off of, they could never find a dead guy, so who knows. But he went trying to run in the front door like John Wayne with a handgun. And as it turns out, when you do that at an entire house of Rangers, you just get shot in the chest, shot in the arm. I don't know exactly where he got shot. I forget. I'm like doing this after having barely heard about this a couple of times years ago. So I just think it's very telling that the staff sergeant here, who was openly threatened and had gone to the police many times about this shit and gotten nothing. Like the Tacoma PD at this time was doing a whole, you know, hearts and minds campaign kind of thing, trying not to like over police people and whatever. And well, people take advantage. And because of that, they did this barbecue thing. And I think there were over 300 rounds exchanged between the gang and the Rangers. It's kind of a miracle no one died. And like the argument to be made for ending this guy's career is he should have gone to the police. This isn't how you do things. Yada yada yada. And that's just wrong. The argument for promoting him is sometimes in combat shit happens. Sometimes people die, and sometimes you have to make decisions, and sometimes those decisions have to be made without the assistance of others. And he took it upon himself to ensure the safety of his neighborhood and the citizenry of that neighborhood by doing what he did, considering the fact that he had already gone to the police dozens and dozens of times trying to get this resolved. This story is 100% what every American should aspire to be. Like if you want to defend yourself, study this gunfight. Don't study the North Hollywood shootout or whatever. Don't study whatever. Study the 1989 Tacoma, Washington Rangers versus Crips shootout. I don't know what else to call this. I think it's the Ash Street shootout or something they call it. And this is reality. This is shit hits the fan. If you want to know what it's going to look like, it's going to look a lot like this. And if you are these Rangers, then shit's going to go well for you. And if you're not, then shit might not. And like the thing is, if these guys weren't, all hard charging fucking whatevers, there's 150 different ways into that house, and there's a million of them, and there's one of him. So even some super stud Ranger or whatever alone is going to get wiped out. I guess is my point. Like, if you're planning for shit hits the fan and you're alone, you need to realize this. And as such, like, if you're fighting alone, it's an entirely different kind of fight. The only way to survive when you're alone is to be highly mobile, which means in today's day and age, vehicular, probably shit. Like, unless you're just, a fucking marathon runner and a little jackrabbit, then yeah, fucking have a really, really light rifle and a really, really light rig. That would be my advice to you. But like, play to your strengths. If you're, the world's greatest chess player, don't get frustrated because, gunfighting is checkers. Learn how to fucking gunfight playing chess or whatever. Learn to do whatever it is that's going to keep you alive. You have skills and abilities. Whether you know it or not, like, creativity in a gunfight is a useful skill. Fucking, there's 100 different things that, like, the reason the warrior poet is the dangerous animal in the room is because of all of the creativity and imagination that he can use to kill you. That's it. That's why when you look at, men of old, the reason, some samurai god king got to be where he was that shit. It was just, I don't even know what I'm saying. I really like this shootout. I think it's a prime example of a lot of shit. And like the just warrior mentality of this dude, I think is pretty epic. I would love to have a conversation with this guy. He's still alive, as I understand it. Still lives in that same house. No one was charged with anything as a result of this, and I believe only one Crip actually made it to a hospital. So, did some of them die? Who knows? Did some of them lick their wounds in private? Probably. Like, as I understand it, there were many of them shot. And this is the thing you got to understand, too, is, there were 20, 30 people shot there, maybe. How many of them died? Guns are not the deadliest thing in the world. Everybody thinks that you're just going to take one shot and make the dude disappear, and that's not exactly accurate. These were trained soldiers, and like maybe they were trying not to kill these dudes. Honestly, I think that's why that there are some of them alive at all. I think if these Rangers had wanted to fucking have heads on pikes, they would have. Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think back to what I was saying a minute ago. I like lost my train of thought and had to go off in a different direction. It happens sometimes. You talk long enough on radio, it'll happen to you too. that samurai god king warrior that I was talking about before, though, half of the reason that he was able to rise to that position that he was because he dedicated his life almost like a monk to the study of what was important to him, which for like the samurai would be like the sword, the bow, and a whole bunch of other shit. But like those would be the primary two, right? Maybe like combat tactics, hand to hand, yada 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 yada. But he's going to make those two an art form, and in doing that, has a lot of time to himself to philosophize and think and whatever. And this is where you get these people from. And the thing that made them rise to the top was that they killed everyone else. It's a pretty fucking like cold way to measure success. But like if you read about like Musashi and shit like that, he just fucking killed motherfuckers. And this is what you can do if you unlock both sides of your brain and have a strong body, or at least a body that is capable of short bursts of energy. And like this is the thing with a lot of like people is they have poor physical conditioning, and if you have that, it's going to be hard. And like a lot of people would look at me and be like, "Oh, you have poor physical conditioning." Actually, it's not bad. I fuck a lot, but I'm kind of fluffy and heavy, and like for a short burst of energy, you don't want to fight me. If the fight goes on for 20, 30 minutes, you'll win. That's just the way it is. And knowing that, I plan my fights that way. Most of the fights I ever fucking had, I ended in one move. Whatever it is, you do something unexpected and violent. And like this is half of the key is violence of action is a thing that ends fights. People get scared. And especially if you can be more violent than the other person, which, yeah, I'm not good at very much. I am good at that. You can just win that fight. And this is a lot of hand to hand and fucking even just weapons combat in general, or even you can apply this to gunfighting. Okay. When in violence and gunfighting is bullets on target. Okay. If you are consistently shooting and hitting what you're shooting at, or hitting near what you're shooting at and advancing, that gun's doing its job. And that's violence of action as it comes to guns in my mind. And like that's, no training or whatever. This is just a lot of studying and thinking and fucking how I do shit. And like that's a lot of what I would like to codify and write down in a book or something is all of this pondering mental exercise about the art of self-defense in the 21st century. I think some of it is worth writing down, and I don't see anyone else writing anything from a civilian perspective. There's lots of military this and, special forces that or whatever. I'm just some jackass with some guns, and this is what I do. And I don't know. I have my moments where I'm pretty smart, and I have my moments where like I do something that is creatively genius. I've done that a few times in my life, and some of it happened to do with guns. Um, for example, I made a holster for myself for my 1911, and like the way I made the belt loop on that holster out of leather, I've never seen anyone else do that. And it kind of made it ride like a cowboy holster. And like I showed it to people that make holsters, and they were like, "Whoa, can I steal that?" Yeah, that's the kind of shit that I'm like, occasionally I have strokes of brilliance. So if I could record down some of the more brilliant strokes, I think it would make a good. I want a book for history. This isn't so much to sell books. This is like 5 or 600 years from now, I want this to be in with like all of the books that are like Renaissance sword fencing treatises and stuff like that. Like this is, you know, the art of civilian defense in the 21st century. And I think I'd like to have a whole chapter on this fucking shootout, maybe. Like, and that would be cool to have a history section and cover some of like the major gunfights of our era that no one talks about. Because like you could do, was it 1986 Miami-Dade Plant Maddox shootout? You could do the, it was 94, 95 North Hollywood shootout. You could do, there's several of these major gunfights that you could just dedicate a chapter of the book to analyzing. And it would be fascinating. And like this is the stuff that I'm interested in rather than guns. I want to know about everything else. And I see lots of gun channels and not a lot of this. So I want at least some of this to be a part of this channel. And I guess it's more like the warrior mindset and mental aspects of fighting. They're important, and they are as important, if not more important, than your physical ability. And if you don't believe that, there's a lot of fucking fights that I could show you that little old men just kick the fucking crap out of people. So, like, it's not always about strength and size, but like one of the things that I think is funny about martial arts is they underplay how much strength and size actually matters, because they are in the market and game and business of selling you a self-defense system. So why would I do karate if karate only works on guys that are smaller than me? Get it? So you have a much wider audience. And in reality, in any fight, if you are smaller and have less reach, you're going to have a disadvantage. And if your martial art doesn't recognize this and doesn't teach you to fight dirty to survive, then it's not really a martial art. If you are in a fight where your opponent is way heavier than you, way bigger than you, you should shoot him. That would be my advice to you. Like, there's a lot of that kind of shit where like we have in America now focused for a long time on, you know, fighting in a McDojo or shooting on a range. And I think we've lost something. And like the thing that we've lost is that living on the edge, fucking tip of the spear. This is real. This is real shit that we really have to do. And so it matters that we get it right. And it's been at least probably 50 years since that was the case for any of this shit. I feel like I've been watching sword documentaries since I was a kid. And a lot of them are just focused on the fact that, you know, the sword is not a modern weapon and yada, yada, yada. And it's a thing of history and whatever. And it's a lost art. And it's like reclaiming the knowledge of how to use these weapons is a lot of what I'm watching. And as such, I feel like when I look at gunfighting and, you know, any martial art in the United States, I feel like we're in the same position. Like in reality, there's like, you know, tip of the spear shit, right? They're good. And like a bunch of vets from Iraq, they're good. But as a whole, America, if they have any training in arms at all, got it on a square range and probably got it from some NRA instructor. And I'm not talking shit about NRA instructors. I am one. I have friends that are them. That's fine. It's a piece of toilet paper that says that you're an instructor on it, though. Know that. And if that's the only place you ever went to do any sort of training whatsoever, maybe you know how to point the gun and shoot it. That's probably pretty close to it, especially after years and years since you've done it. And when you see people talking about, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA or boxing or whatever, they're talking about it the way that I'm trying to get you to talk about guns. That's what these are for. We should acknowledge that. We should be proud of that. We have a Second Amendment to protect that. All of this fear of, having weapons and being a martial mindset, fuck that. It's 2022. Much has changed since the defeats of, 2008. To paraphrase Dwight D. Eisenhower. This is D-Day speech for those who didn't realize it. I'm at the point where, with what's going on in the world, they can come and take them. And as such, I think everyone should know how to use them. And I don't mean know how to use them like, oh, I can shoot 22s at the farm. I mean like fire and maneuver tactics, how to effectively use cover, concealment, and how to fucking select fields of fire, and how to fucking dig foxholes and emplacements and entrench, and how to fortify a house, and all of this shit. This is the stuff that, like, you should know in addition to how to shoot. At the very least, like, at least home defense stuff. I have a book somewhere that has pictures from a British manual in World War II in it. That was a British book on how to defend homes in England for the Nazi invasion. It's a useful thing to read. They had some good ideas. They had a lot of shit that these guys in this shootout could have used. Like, they had pieces of wood with nails in them just all over the staircase, just nailed into the staircase with nails facing up. That'll slow people down. That'll slow them down from the stairs for damn sure. It looked like a sheet of plywood, like that, like people would do for bears up in Alaska. And sandbag bunkering houses and whatever. Like, I'll do more videos on home defense, especially I'll show pictures out of that book. That is a cool thing that they show that actually is stuff that you could do. And that's a lot of what this channel is going to be focused on too, is things that you can do. And learning learning is something that anyone can do, especially through YouTube. I would encourage you to learn more. Thanks for watching. I'm sorry this kind of like went all over the place. I had a giant brain fart in the middle of it, but it had its ups and downs. It had a couple of good points. I really wanted to discuss this shooting, and I wasn't sure how to do it, really. There's a video or two on YouTube about this that shows pictures of it, and they go through it point by point. I could not do that and do it well. If you want that, go find those. Thanks for watching.